I'm Steve, and I'm from Scram Speed. I had always really liked the Mad Max movies. I'd always really liked that kind of thing. I saw Mad Max when I was 12 years old, and it was probably part of the reason why I got into cars in the first place. I wanted to make one that was like the cars in the movie. Started out life as a kind of a hot rod, one of the last hot rods before they just quit making that kind of car entirely. It had a 351 Cleveland in it. It had a Ford 9-inch rear end in it, 4-barrel carburetor. It was not legendary by any stretch, but it was kind of still a hot rod. I got this car a couple of years ago from a father and son who kind of bought it sight unseen, and it was kind of a pile. So they decided to get rid of it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it at the time, so it just kind of sat here. It was a good price. I couldn't pass it up, that kind of thing, thanks to my very patient and tolerant wife who puts up with that kind of nonsense. So it sat here for a couple of years, and I had always really liked the Mad Max movies. I'd always really liked that kind of thing. I saw Mad Max when I was 12 years old, and it was probably part of the reason why I got into cars in the first place. So it's always been inspiring to me. And then other movie came out, that Fury Road came out, and that was really exciting. So I finally kind of decided, after watching that on DVD, I kind of decided that I wanted to do something like that. The car is kind of a work in progress, but it does run, it does drive. I wanted something that was actually functional. I didn't want kind of a static piece. And I really wanted it to make some horsepower, because that's what we do here all day, every day. So I pulled the 351 Cleveland out of it, and I sold that. I sold that for about what I bought the car for, so that worked out really well. And I put in a 302 out of a Ford Explorer, the Junkyard engine, and I just kind of left that alone. It came with the GT40P heads, as every Ford guy knows. I put a Motorsport Ford B-cam in it, and that's kind of funny. There's actually, back in the day, it got to be kind of a joke that every combination, no matter what, everybody was like, yeah, put a B-cam in it. And so we did that. There was actually like a B-cam prayer back in the day, and I thought that's exactly the kind of thing a Mad Max car would have. So sooner or later, we'll have that B-cam prayer like written on the dash or something. I've got a pair of 62 millimeter turbos on it that are real turbos. They're Bullseye turbos, S300s, I believe. The kind of turbo that somebody would put in their hot rod Mitsubishi Eclipse. They're each good to about 500 horse. So that's working well. It's run by Holley Dominator EFI, which is again one of the reasons for the project. We really wanted to play with some of the stuff that it can do that customer cars don't really have, or customers don't really want to mess with, like dual drive-by-wire throttle bodies and other tricks. But I'm a carburetor guy. I like carburetors just fine. All the cars in those movies are carbureted. But I really wanted it to be, when I get a chance to drive it, I want to be able to hop it in and drive it. And I do drive it, and it does make close to 450 horse. We're on 8 pounds of boost, which the plan is to go to 15 pounds of boost when we get the air-to-water intercooler hooked up. It probably drives like a really decent pro street car, which is not great by BMW standards, but by hot rod standards, it's all right. And when it does go down the road, I can go down the highway at 80 miles an hour just like anybody else. I've taken it on 100-mile round trips, and it hasn't really missed a trick or, really left me stranded anywhere, which is nice, although I do expect that every time I leave the driveway. People seem to really like it. A lot more people you wouldn't expect will come up and recognize it as a Mad Max car. So that's kind of neat. There are a couple of people who really, really don't like it. Some people who this, 73 Mustang is their favorite car. Sometimes they don't make the most favorable reaction to it. It's not supposed to be any particular car out of those movies. It's just supposed to be influenced by the films and the cars that were in them. But again, functional. I bet it does go faster than any of the cars they actually built for the films. And, because I don't believe they ever really tried to make practical cars out of those. The thing I really admired about those movies was they came out with an art book of the last one. And it shows some of the interiors on them and some of the detail work that they did and some of the creative solutions they came up with to make them look Mad Max and cool. And then I had some tentative sketches that I did back in the day when I was still starting the project. It's come a long way since then, but these were just some of my ideas before we got rolling.
We just kind of flipped to that on accident, right? Didn't even know that was there.
I totally forgot about them. They were just hanging out in the back of the book. Obviously, I'm not the artist they are. And now that I've actually built one of these things, I actually admire the work they did even more. It's a little more challenging than you would think, and it does require more creativity than you initially would suspect. I'm fortunate enough to have these guys I work with that can do just about anything. The only thing about this is I didn't really want it to be nice. And of course, everything that we do in the shop is really nice. They do really high quality work, and they're really diligent and thorough. And so it was kind of hard to make them dumb it down enough to make the look that I was going for. I kind of wanted it to look like, you know, some guys who maybe didn't know what they were doing were putting it together, and they were doing it with, you know, crude tools and all that sort of thing. So keep in mind when you see this thing, this is not the level of quality that my shop does. This is Mad Max nonsense, you know. So that's where we're going after with that. I've taken it to a couple of car shows, and the peculiar thing to me is people, you know, like I said, this isn't the most popular body style, but people like to come up and say, I always hated these. And it's like, yeah, well, thanks for coming over here and telling me that. Yeah, well, I don't remember asking you that. Other guys at car shows can probably sympathize that people are just very free with their opinions about the stuff that you've worked really hard on. One of the things about this particular body style is you sit in it really low. You're really low, and the dash is really high. So, you know, you always feel like you're like this. And in this position, the car actually drives better. It actually drives better. You can see down the hood like a regular car. And you've got like a much more like command seat type of situation going on. So that's kind of a neat thing about it that I did not expect. I would have expected having the throttle body sticking out of the hood was going to be a real problem, but it's really not. You can really see really well out of it. You can see out the back. I also have a backup camera. The rearview mirror is basically fed to a backup camera, so I can see what's going on behind me. Just to make sure. In Mad Max, I wouldn't really care if I ran into anybody, but you know, in this situation, I don't want to do that. It's got Mickey Thompson Baja Claw 35-inch tires on the back. It's and it's got some neat parts in it. It does have Viking coilover struts on the front to give the extra added height in the front. I accomplished the lift in the back using an axle flip. I flipped the spring pads onto the top of the axle, and then I've got some extended shackles on the back of it, and it is a lot of extra lift. The tire, and you know, it fits that 35-inch tire pretty well. Part of an artifact of it being an old drag car is the front end is fiberglass, which is a little bit unfortunate for what we're trying to do, because of course we could sand it down and make it rusty and give it some cool patina. You have to be careful when you're putting exhaust over fiberglass fenders, because you don't want to melt it. So that was a kind of a challenge. This was a real bucket list item for me, was to build a car like this, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I'm really happy with the performance it has. I'm looking forward to having more performance out of it when we add some boost to it and put the water on the air-to-water intercooler. I like it. I like talking to people about it. It's turned out better than I thought it would, so I'm really happy with it. If you like this kind of stuff, if you're the kind of guys like us who like car stuff, then give us a like and a subscribe and check us out later on. Is that it?